Hello everyone, TimeToGrind here, and today I wanted to break down and be the patch note professor for the mid-season gameplay update. And the update hasn't come out yet as we're recording this video. It should be out either today or tomorrow. But it seems to be the biggest balance update that we've had in the history of the game. So there's a lot to go on, so we should probably get started sooner rather than later. I'm going to just go through the entire patch notes, read them all out, give my opinions, what I think it's going to change the meta or the game or anything like that. And like I said, it's a lot of stuff, so let's just jump into it. So the first thing that we got are just the general updates. They added loot round tips and tricks to the season info tab, so that's nice. Added battle pass loadout. You can now change your equipped items. It's nice. The map that was level 5 in the battle pass, Path to Sunbreeze, is out. Fixed high CPU utilization on Mac OS. Removed code that caused crashes and kept code that didn't cause crashes. That's the best thing you could ask for. They buffed battle pass XP rewards for playing matches pretty drastically, especially here at the lower parts. You know, 8th goes from 10 to 50, 7th 10 to 60. So it's buffing that. And they also buffed the tiers of challenges from 250 to 400, 500 to 800, and 1,000 to 1,600. So overall, it's just easier to level up your battle pass. Can't complain about that. They've improved performance on iOS and Android devices for mobile, and improved the battery usage on iOS. Now let's get into the gameplay. So combat persists while some abilities complete their attack. So Lich, Witch Doctor, etc. Just kind of more of them pushing. They want ties to be able to be a thing. Summons are no longer included in targeting for cells except for special summons like Arc Warden and Spirit Bear. So Doom can no longer just doom a Venomancer ward. So technically it's a nerf to people that have those summons, because you theoretically want them to be, you want the enemies to waste their spells on them. You want, Lena to Laguna Blade a ward. So a little nerf to that, but it makes sense. It's a lot less frustrating, because why would Doom ever, you don't want Doom to hit on a Venomancer ward. They've also fixed boxes and assassins, boxed in assassins not jumping towards their enemies. So just a little buff to assassins, kind of a bug fix though, but it's nice. Also, assassins that have an enemy in their attack range will attack instead of jumping. So I would say that's overall a buff, just because instead of them jumping around constantly, if there's someone they need to be attacking, they're going to be attacking that person. And also makes sense a little bit more, because why are they going to jump away from a target they should be attacking? Changed the length of preparation phase for the first 3 rounds from 25 seconds to 15 seconds. So it's just shaving 30 seconds off the game. I mean, it's pretty useful. The game needs to be shorter, I think. I don't have a problem playing long games, but overall for general population, it's better the most we can shave off, especially those first 3 rounds. There's a lot of time we can shave off, so it'll be nice to have that quicken up. Don't target healing disabled units for heals. So that's quite good, because if someone can't be healed, why would you be healing them? So that is just buffing anybody with healing. So Warlock, stuff like that. Overall, not going to impact too much, because there's not a lot of circumstances where that ended up happening. But it's a nice quality of life change. It also is an indirect buff to characters that have healing. There is now a notification when someone completes their win streak, so that's just nice, because they changed it where the win streaks, they don't just keep going, it kind of resets, so you get 1 gold, 2 gold, 3 gold, 4 gold, and then it kind of like resets back to as if you didn't get a win streak. So you now get to see if someone actually completes their win streak. Also, this is a big one. You won't see heroes from the previous shop whenever you re-roll the shop. So what that means is, people have been confused about it a lot. So what it means is, say, as an example, we're just going to simplify this. Your 5 units that you can see, there's 3 Ogre Magis and 2 Warlocks, okay? And you don't want any Warlocks at all. You don't want that. This is late game. You don't care for the Ogre Magis, you don't care for the Warlocks, and you don't want them. If you re-roll, it prevents you from seeing Ogre Magi or Warlock in your new shop. Now that doesn't mean if you re-roll again, it doesn't protect you from seeing the Ogre Magis and Warlocks. It kind of just is the next one. So the very next re-roll you do, you won't be able to see any of the heroes that were in what you re-rolled. So if there's 5 different warriors and you're not running warriors and you re-roll, you're not going to see any of those 5 warriors, except if you re-roll again, you're opening yourself up to those original warriors, but you won't see what you just had re-rolled away from. So a little more consistency, and that's a nice change to see. So now we have the alliance changes, and there are some interesting things in here. So First off, we got some changes to the Warlock Alliance. Warlock Alliance now targets the unit with the lowest health percentage, not lowest health value, which theoretically should be useful because say you have an amazing 3-star unit and you have a 1-star unit, there's a lot of circumstances where overall you're going to want that 3-star unit healed more than the 1-star unit, but because the 1-star unit has less health beforehand, you know, in the patch that is getting changed, you would heal the 1-star unit in a lot of circumstances, when in most times you're going to want to heal the person with the lowest health percentage, and so that's just a good buff, honestly. Like, there's not a lot of circumstances where I think it's going to matter, but those circumstances that it matters could be, you know, round changing. You could win a round that you should have lost, so I think that's actually a pretty big buff to Warlock. Also, their lifesteal changed from 50%, 100% to 150% to 50%, 80%, and 130%. So they did get nerfed. The lifesteal that their bonuses provide is going to be the same at level 1, which is kind of nice, but then it's going to get nerfed. I would say overall Warlocks have been nerfed, even though they're now targeting lowest health percentages. That is a nerf. You know, 20% on Tier 2 and Tier 3 of the Alliance thing is pretty big. It's pretty impactful. I don't think they're going to be dumpstered. I think they're still going to be pretty solid, but that is a pretty noticeable nerf to Warlocks. The Troll Alliance, the Tier 1 now provides 10% attack speed bonus to all allies. So there's a lot of changes that happen with some trolls here in the patches that I'll get to in a little bit. But I think that's really useful because trolls, it's kind of, they're one of the alliances that it feels like they're not really useful until you get your full 4, because, you know, if you get the, you know, starting, say you get the just 2 easy trolls, or, you know, any of the 3 starting trolls that aren't just Troll Warlord, giving themselves extra attack speed doesn't really matter too much, except for maybe Bat Rider, but the fact that it now provides 10% attack speed bonus to all of them is going to make it, it's a pretty big early game buff. And I think it's, you know, obviously it's not a huge buff, but I think it's going to be nice, and I think trolls are going to you're going to see a couple more people trying for that early on. Now you have Knight Alliance changed from -15, -20, -30 to -15, -20, -25. So just their Tier 3, the, you know, like damage reduction stuff, it got nerfed. So I feel like overall you're still going to see people, I think Knights are still strong, but you might see a couple people not go for, you know, full on Knight Alliance, because it didn't change except for the final, you know, tier of that alliance, so not too impactful. Bloodbound Alliance extra damage changed from 100% to 125% chance. Bloodbound, kind of just that support thing, when one of them dies, the other person gets 100% extra damage. Now they're going to get 125% extra damage. Small little buff. I don't think we're going to see more Bloodbound than we did previously. I don't think it's going to change that much, but it's still nice. The Heartless Alliance changed from -5, -10, and -20 armor on the enemies to -5, -10, -15. So it is yet another just of the 3rd tier of an alliance being nerfed. And one thing that's very interesting about this is the only way to get that, you know, last tier of Heartless is you have to get that Fall from Grace item, because there's not enough Heartless units to get that tier 3 without the item. So I feel like there's a lot of planning that goes into the 3rd tier of Heartless, and I don't know if I necessarily like it being nerfed. I definitely think you're going to see a lot of people not going as hard into, you know, getting the item, getting the humans to turn into the Heartless. I think overall we're probably, I might predict that might be the end of people going for that. You know, if you get really lucky and you get offered it and you already have some Heartless and you already have, like, you know, maybe you're going Knights and you already have like an Omni Knight, and so you're like, okay, maybe I'll do this. I think it's still going to be a thing people do, but I think people are going to be going for it a lot less. It's a pretty big nerf, honestly. Primordial Alliance now also has a 10% chance to disarm ranged attackers for 4 seconds. So it's less of a chance, but it actually affects the ranged units in a way, which is nice, because Primordial was kind of weird because it only affected you know, the melee attackers. So it's nice. It's definitely a good buff, but it's also only a 10% chance. So you know, you're gonna have to get lucky on that. And this is probably the biggest alliance change, I'd say, for this patch, and it's the Scrappy Alliance. So now the Scrappy Alliance, it only takes 2 units per level, it's down from 3, which is just going to make it easier to get, obviously. Level 1 is a random scrap unit is granted +9 armor, +8 HP regen. Level 2 is all scrap units are granted +9 armor and +8 regeneration. Level 3, all allies are granted 9 armor and 8 regeneration, and armor and HP are doubled if you start the fight with less units than your opponent. Is changed to armor and HP are doubled whenever you have fewer units alive than your opponent does. So the only thing that really changed is there was this really weird thing they did where if you started the fight with less units than your opponent, you would get the double armor and HP regen, and that didn't really make much sense, and it didn't really impact much, especially since Scrappy was kind of like an early game thing that kind of fell off mid game, that if you got the right pieces could potentially do some more stuff late game, and it didn't really make sense with starting less units. But now it's whenever you have fewer units alive, so you start doing worse and worse and worse. You know, if you're losing the fight, your Scrappies are going to pick up the slack, and I think that's it's a good lore friendly change, and I think it's honestly a pretty big buff to them. Because before, the doubling of the armor and HP it wasn't really a thing. Not very often were you going to start with less units than your opponent. I mean, obviously you could play around it, but it wasn't something that frequently happened. Having just fewer units alive than your opponent does is going to happen quite a lot. So you're going to just see that armor and HP doubled quite a lot now with Scrappy. So that's a pretty big change. I think we're going to see Scrappy a lot. But the thing is alliance changes, they're not in a bubble. They also come with hero changes, and oh my, are there a lot of hero changes. So Abaddon, first of all, his attack damage minimum changed from 4590 to 180 to 4590 216. So just tier 3 Abaddon's gonna, you know, deal more damage. Also with the maximum damage 5510 to 220 to now 5510 264. So just a little bit of that maximum damage at tier 3. And his shield, his damage absorb changed from 100 300 500 to 100 300 600. So we're just buffing Abaddon at that is tier 3, his 3-star value. So that's interesting. I don't think it's like that big of a change. It's just kind of something small. It's not going to impact it too much, but you know, it's welcome. Arc Warden, his attack speed used to just be 0.59. It's now going to be 0.59, 0.67, and 0.77 depending on how much you level him up. So he's going to be attacking a lot faster, which also means that he's going to be getting that mana faster, at least on the first one. So that's pretty nice. Also, his maximum health was 600, 1100, 2200. It's now 600, 1100, and 2650. So just, you know, buffing how much health he has is at tier 3. And then the minimum and maximums, it used to be 75, 150, 250. Now 75, 150, 300, and 85, 170, 290 to 85, 170, 350. So like Abaddon, we're just increasing the amount of damage, both minimum and maximum at tier 3. So, or, you know, 3 stars. So a lot of these changes aren't really going to impact most of the game because not very often do you get tier 3 units, especially these higher level, Arc Wardens, tier 3. So the fact that it's a lot harder to get him a 3-star. So I think they're just wanting to maybe make it more impactful to get 3 stars. Because one thing is a lot of people like to say that 2 stars can honestly be better than a 3-star in some circumstances, just because of the fact that the 3-star isn't that much better. So I think that might be what they're trying to do here. And now we get into, you're going to see a lot of this happening in this patch, but it's Clockwork. So, his armor used to be 579, it's now 5710, just, buffing him at tier 3. His maximum health was 700, 1400, and 2800, and now it's 800, 1600, and 3200. So it's just, across the board, he has more maximum health. His attack damage was 45, 90, 180, 55, 110, and 220. So it's like there's a pretty substantial buff. So you're like, why is that? Well, because he is now a tier 3. He costs 3 gold, and he is a 3-tier unit. And there's a lot of these in this balance patch. So everything you know about Dota Underlords is changing with this patch, because not only are we buffing and nerfing people, we are also doing that in the way of changing their entire tier. So he is now a tier 3 unit. So Clockwork you'll see a lot less early on, which also impacts the Scrappy Alliance. That's why I was saying those alliance bonuses don't just happen in a bubble. His attack damage also went from 55, 110 to 220, 265, 130, and 260. And his battery assault, the damage tick rate just used to always be 0.7. It's now 0.7, 0.7, and 0.35, which is pretty huge change. Like I said, though, it has to be a tier 3. And on top of that, Clockwork is now a tier 3. So getting him a 3-star, is going to be a lot harder. Next, we got Enigma. They changed him from Primordial Warlock to Primordial Shaman, so he's no longer a Warlock. That does buff Shaman a little bit, and nerfs Warlock just because Enigma is one of the best. Warlocks obviously is a great legendary, and now he's no longer a Warlock. So, I don't think Shaman is the best alliance right now, but that might be buffed with the Enigma change. Also, they did nerf his ability. The radius used to be from 2, 3, 4 tiles to 1, 2, 3. So the actual Midnight Pulse is going to be a lot smaller. They're kind of giving him the Kunkka treatment a little bit. I think the fact that he is no longer a Warlock and how pretty good Warlocks were, I think that's a nerf to Enigma. And the fact that I don't think Shamans are that great right now. But we could see Shamans be better because they have Enigma, and although the nerf is pretty big, I don't think it's that necessarily bad of a change. I don't think, it's going to matter too much, but it is definitely a nerf to Enigma. Now we have Kunkka. His ghost ship, the damage was changed from 150, 250 to 350 to 50, 150, 250. So they just cutting 100 damage off the board. And the fact that it was 100 damage to everybody it hit is a pretty big change. And on top of that, his cooldown changed from 10 to 15 seconds, which is actually a pretty big deal. Depending on, the team compositions and stuff you're doing, you might only get one ghost ship compared to, sometimes you might have been getting 2. So honestly, that is a huge nerf to Kunkka. Obviously that also nerfs warriors and anybody that's doing Kunkka. But I don't think Kunkka's going to be bad. I just think he's no longer as good as he was, obviously. I think that's a pretty, you look at the number and you're like, oh, okay, just 100 less damage, but you have to keep in mind that's 100 less damage on that huge AoE that's hitting everybody, and that does impact a lot. And the fact that he's going to be doing it less frequently, in some battles only once when he would be doing it twice, is also a huge nerf. So we'll have to see what happens to Kunkka. It's definitely a big nerf. I think he's still going to be played. I think he's still good, but not nearly as much as he was. Then Lina, the Laguna Blade, damage was 500, 750 to 1,000 to 500, 750, 1,200. So just making her better at 3 stars. That's just a thing that's happened in this patch, which I definitely appreciate. Lone Druid, the maximum mana changed from 100 to 600, and Spirit Bear, Summon Spirit Bear mana cost changed from 100 to 60. So he is just... It's a buff. It's a pretty small buff because overall normally you did get Lone Druids. There was never a really circumstance where you didn't get your Spirit Bear. You're just going to get it sooner, which is definitely helpful. And then in the cases where... The reason I say, Lone Druid's pretty tanky most of the time. I very rarely had him die before he summoned the Spirit Bear. That's why it's a buff, but it's not necessarily the biggest buff in the world, but it's pretty welcome. I think Lone Druid wasn't the best, and now he is. And on top of that, the Alliance changed from Savage on the Spirit Bear itself, not Lone Druid. The bear just used to be Savage, and now it's a Savage Druid, so that'll be interesting, kind of just for consistency. Then we have a Lycan. So Lycan's maximum health was 750, 1,500, 3,000 to 750, 1,500, 3,600, making him better at 3 stars. And then the minimum and maximum damage, it used to be 50, 100, 200. Now it's 50, 100, 240. And the maximum was 60, 120, 240 to 60, 120, 288. So... just make him better at 3 star. I definitely like the fact that all of the 3 stars are getting better because I think 3-starring a unit overall didn't feel as powerful, and now it definitely will, just pretty much across the board. But for a lot of these, like I said, it's not really going to impact the general balance of the game because very rarely are you going to 3-star these higher tier units. And so it's just making it more satisfying if you can. On top of that, the summoned wolves now have phased movement and can run through other units, which honestly is a pretty big buff because there were a lot of circumstances where Lycan's wolves would get stuck depending, they couldn't move, they couldn't get to who they wanted to. So I think it's actually a pretty big buff, the fact that they have phased movement now. This is another big change. We got Medusa. She is no longer a tier 4. She is a tier 5. She be a legendary now. And they gave her her really great split shot back. So the damage modifier of each of the shots, they're instead of minus 40%, they're minus 20%. And the extra shots changed from just, she had the 2 shots. There's now 2, 3, and 4. So, most likely you're not going to get up to the 4 because now she is a legendary. So, most likely you're not going to 3-star her, but, getting that 3 extra shots back with the 2-star is going to be huge. I think Medusa is overall going to be a lot better. The thing that sucks is obviously she's a legendary, so you can't get her as soon. But I think she's definitely going to be stronger than she was. You're going to see her a lot more. And I am very excited for that because I think Medusa is just a really cool unit, lore-wise as well, that it makes sense that she's a legendary. It's really cool. Mirana, her maximum mana from 100 to 70, so she's going to be able to get her Sacred Arrow off sooner. Also, the mana cost obviously was changed from 100 to 70. The minimum damage was 5,510 to 220, and it's now 66, 132, 264. Maximum was 65, 130, 260, 278, 156, 312. So it is just, especially on this tier 3 of the maximum damage from 260 to 312, that's pretty big. But just across the board, not just a tier 3, she's going to be getting her ability off faster, her damage is going to be more, and I think Mirana was definitely one of the weaker units in this, past meta. So it's really nice to see her excel. I really hope to see her more because she's a tier 4 unit. She deserves to be powerful. Now we have Morphling. The attack speed was changed from 0.77 to 0.91, so he's just attacking faster. Maximum mana changed from 100 to 75, so he's going to be getting his stuff off faster. And Waveform, the cooldown is now instead of 10.86 to 8.64, and then obviously the mana is now 75, so he's just going to be attacking faster, and he's going to get his ability faster. And his ability is one of the better abilities in the game for what tier he is and everything. He's going to be pretty cool. Obviously, it doesn't really matter at 2-starring and 3-starring because it's still, or no, sorry, my bad. It's just across the board. I was getting confused with those 6s. So just across the board, it's 2 seconds less, and 2 seconds can mean the difference in the game. Nature's Prophet, his Nature's Call now, the cast animation changed from 1.97 to 1, so he's going to get them off faster, effectively pretty much in half the time, and his treants now spawn near him, and their attack speed went from 0.67 to 0.83, and his maximum health of the treants, went from 300, 500, 700 to 350, 600, and 800, and I think they're buffing him along with Lone Druid, because Druids were really strong in this patch, but the only really reason wasn't because of them. They weren't really the strong units there, so it's nice to see them get a buff. Especially this Nature's Prophet buff is a pretty big change. Having his cast animation half in time, his attack speed of the treants and health, go up is great. Necrophos, the death pulse cooldown from 5 to 7.5, so it's a pretty big nerf. It's not like I don't think he's gonna be dumpster. I don't think he's gonna be bad. I think he's still good, but that you're definitely gonna notice that. And that's all they did with Necrophos. Omni Knight, they changed his maximum health from 700, 1400, 2800 to 700, 1400, 3360. So just a 3-star change. That's actually very impactful. The attack damage minimum and maximums got changed. 40, 80, 160 to the 40, 80, 190, and then 50, 100, 200 to 50, 100, 240. 3-star changes. That we're seeing across the board. Purification, the heal went from 200, 400, 600 to 200, 400, 720. Just a 3-star thing. So the thing with a lot of these changes is like I've said multiple times, is it's really hard to say how much they're going to impact the meta because of the fact that it's just getting the 3 stars. So very rarely are you going to 3-star a unit, and because of the fact that so many of them are having their damage or heal, or their spells getting buffed on the 3-star, and it's kind of across the board, a lot of these changes effectively don't really matter because they're coming along with all of the other changes. So if everybody's getting buffed in the same way, it's not necessarily a buff. It's kind of just the game changing a little bit. Obviously, depending on how impactful, how much damage increase they got, you can see small little buffs and nerfs, but the fact that everybody is effectively getting better at 3-star makes it almost that none of them are really getting better in comparison to each other. In a vacuum, obviously, it's a buff, but when you look at it with everything else, Not necessarily. With PA, now this is a pretty big change. PA, the damage maximum and minimum, 70, 140, 280, 270, 140, 300, just 3-star buff, 90, 80, 360, 90, 80, 400. But what's been changed here was the, her good old crit chance, her passive ability changed from just the base 10 to 15, 20, and 25. So she's going to be critting a lot more often, and crits are very impactful. So at just a 1-star unit, she's already getting a buff there, and then she's going to have more than double at the 3-star. She's going to have double at 2-star. So PA, be on the lookout for PA, and assassins as well. Be on the lookout. Also, because of that, we're just going to skip down here real fast. We're going to skip Puck for a second. I'm saying be careful of assassins, also because a lot of them got changed, but Queen of Pain is right here. Armor changed from 0 to 5, so that 5 extra armor is going to help Queen of Pain out a lot. But going back to Puck, the maximum mana changed 100 to 60, and that's all we're really doing there. So I think that's a pretty nice buff to Puck. I don't think Puck was necessarily that bad, especially if you have the Dragon Alliance, but I think that's definitely handy. I think she's going to be put on the level like everybody else. We got another entirely different, tier change. We got Razor. So, to kind of preface everything, he's no longer going to be a tier 3 unit, he's going to be a tier 1 unit, and because of that, his maximum health is going from 750, 1500, 3000 to 500, 1000, 2000, so pretty big nerfs, but, he is a tier 1 unit, and the attack damage went from 50, 100, 200 to 40, 80, 160. On top of that, his attack and damage maximum, 60, 120, 240, and 50, 100, 200. And also, the max damage of his plasma field went from 100, 175, 250 to 50, 100, 150. So he is a lot worse of a unit, but he is a tier 1 unit, which means not only is you're going to get him early on, so he has to be worse, but he's going to be easier to 3-star. So definitely be on the lookout for that. And we got a lot of changes to Sand King. He is no longer a tier 3, he is a tier 4. His maximum health went from 550, 1100, 2200 to 750, 1500, 3200. So pretty substantial, buffs there. His damage minimum and maximum changed. It used to be 45, 90, 180 to 70, 140, 270, and 60, 120, 240 to 80, 160, 320. Obviously, biggest jumps here are going to be the tier 3 or 3-star. I keep getting the tier 3 and 3-star terminology confused. But that is not it. His Caustic Finale, the attack slow changed from -30 to -35. Attack slow duration changed from 3 to 3.5. Damage on expiration changed from 45, 90, 180 to 55, 100, 190. So just kind of adding 10 across the board. Damage on kill changed from 50, 100, 150 to 60, 110, 160, 10 across the board. And Burrow Strike now displaces the target unit from its cell, which is actually pretty impactful because say he's going off, to some mages or something and they're, packed into a corner, he could potentially, depending on how it's going, he could just move them out of that corner. So Sand King, definitely be on the lookout for Sand King, and like I said, be on the lookout for Assassins because I think Assassins are going to be crazy now. You got the Sand King buff, that's massive. You got the Queen of Pain buff, which is very small, but it's going to matter a lot. And then the huge PA buff of that crit chance going up. Now we have Shadow Fiend. His attack damage minimum and maximum got changed just for the 3-stars. You got instead of 280, you got 336, and then instead of 320, you got 384. So you got the 3-star. Slark's maximum health just got changed at the 3-star, 2000 to 2400, and then the attack damage minimum maximum went from 105 to 126 to 145 to 174. Then with Sniper, his attack speed used to just be always 0.63, and now it's just getting buffed at the 3-star to 0.77. His maximum health changing at the 3-star to 1800 to 2160, and then minimum and maximum just changing at the 3-star, like everything else in this patch, with 330 to 396 and 360 to 432. So, better at a 3-star, who would have thought. Now, Techie's Remote Mines, they're changing the radius from 4 to 334, which doesn't sound that bad, but that extra huge, extra thing of that radius, because you're pretty much never going to get Techies to a 4-star. And one thing that you're going to notice here is they're just nerfing a lot of the AoEs. The meta before this was the legendary AoE meta. You just got a bunch of, you got Gyro, you got Tidehunter, you got Enigma, you got Techies, all of these, legendaries that had all these huge AoE things. So we're seeing a lot of nerfs to them, and a lot of the units that are legendaries in themselves. So you're not going to see a lot of that anymore. Terrorblade, his maximum health got changed to the 3-star from 2600 to 3120, which is actually a very big change there. And then the minimum and maximum got changed at the 3-star to 180 to 216 and 260 to 312. And then we got another one of the biggest changes, Tidehunter. So he is no longer a legendary. He got replaced with Medusa. Medusa took Tidehunter's place. And Tidehunter, on top of that, is no longer a scaled hunter. He is a scaled warrior. So that is going to be very interesting. I saw a lot of people making jokes that Tidehunter is no longer a hunter, and he's a Tide warrior. But, bounty hunter is not a hunter. He's an assassin. So whatever. His maximum health got nerfed because he is no longer legendary. 950, 1900, 3800 to 850, 1700, 3400. His health regeneration changed from 5 to just 0. And the radius of his Ravage went from 234 to 123, which is a huge, it just looks like, just one less, but that's a one tile, radius. So that's very big, especially because a 1-star unit of Ravage previously would do 2 and 1. It's only 1 now. So a 1-star Tidehunter is definitely going to suck. Not suck, but a lot less effective. And then the damage went from 150, 250, 350 to 100, 150, 250. And then the duration changed from 2.53 to 2.253. So just a small little change there at the tier 2. Overall, though, he did get nerfed very heavily, but you also have to keep in mind he went from a, tier 5 to a tier 4. So because of that, we might see, technically there's a better chance to get him 3-starred. So I think Tidehunter is still going to be in a very good place. I think it does suck that you can no longer have the 2 scaled, there's no longer the scaled hunter and scaled hunter of Tidehunter and Medusa, but I think it makes sense because honestly it was kind of lame the fact that you could just wait until late game. My last video I made was like a top 5 favorite alliances, and I mentioned scaled was one of them just because of how stupid easy it was to at least get that 2, thing with the 2 scaled, and you can still do that, but it's going to be a lot less effective. You won't just have 2 rangers or hunters, so if you had any other hunter, it's not going to do that. But I think Tidehunter is going to find a good place still, just because he's Tidehunter. Tinker also got changed, so you had Clockwork get changed. You also have Tinker. He went from a tier 1 to a tier 3 as well, so because of that he got buffed pretty well. Health went from 500, 1000 to 2000 to 750, 1500, 3500. Attack damage minimum maximum changed. It used to be 40, 80, 160. It's now 50, 100, 225. And then maximum 50, 100, 200, 260, 120, 275. And this is what's pretty crazy here. So Heat Seeking Missile, the cooldown changed from 864 to 86.5, and that's not a typo. He will literally have his cooldown be 0.5 at 3-star. So Tinker is going to be crazy 3-starred, but keep in mind he is a tier 3 unit, so the chance that you're actually going to have that happen, not very likely. But it's kind of lore friendly, I think, because in Tinker, Dota 2, you have the refresh orb and you have the rearm, so kind of makes sense. I think it's really cool. Damage per missile changed from 250, 350, 400 to 350, 450, 450. So it's not really, it stays the same at the 3-star, but that's because the cooldown is so drastically small at the 3-star. And then targets changed from 3 to 3, 4. Which is interesting. Treant Protector was one of the biggest, was one of the best units in this patch. His maximum health was 650, 1300 to 2300. It's now 750, 1500, 2500. And you're like, well, that's a buff? Well, that is because his tier changed as well. He used to be tier 2. He's now tier 3, which is going to make it a lot harder to just do the cheese strats with him of getting those early druids. And his Leech Seed damage changed from 60, 90, 120 to 80, 110, 150. Radius changed from 3 to 1, though, so it's a huge change. And it also expires when the target dies. So those changes to Leech Seed were really, he did get buffed because he went up a tier, but those changes to Leech Seed are very impactful, and I think Treant is going to be seen a lot less. And honestly, Druids just in general, I don't really know where they're going to be in this, meta, because Druids originally were really good early on, and they could kind of just carry you through the mid game. They, kind of fell off late game, obviously, especially with the legendary meta. But Treant himself and just one other druid, really anyone, didn't really matter. You're mainly using him because of Treant, could just carry you through the game, honestly, if you got a decent amount. So the fact that you can no longer do that, and it's also harder because he's a tier 3, is going to be very interesting. This is another tier change. Troll Warlord is now a legendary, so he's now tier 5 instead of tier 4. His attack speed changed from 0.91 to 0.1, so it's a pretty good buff. His maximum health went from 900, 1800, 3600 to 1200, 2000, 4000, and then the minimum and maximum used to be 90, 180, 360. It's now 180, 360, 520, so pretty much doubling his minimum damage, and then doubling his maximum damage being 100, 200, 400, 200, 400, 600, and keep in mind, those are his damage things, but the whole special thing about him is he attacks faster and faster and faster, and also his base attack speed went up. So not only are you pretty much doubling the damage, you're also doubling the damage, but it's not just like, oh, I attack every 5 seconds. He attacks 1,000,000 times a second, so doubling the damage on that is going to be crazy. So Troll Warlord is going to be insane this patch. I honestly think he got one of the biggest buffs on this entire patch. Obviously, he's now a tier 5, so it's a lot harder to get him. On top of that, the troll bonus in itself is a lot harder to get because you have the 3 trolls early on, and now you have to wait until a legendary. So it's kind of theoretically nerfing the troll buff or alliance technically, but the fact that troll got buffed that much, the troll alliance is going to end up being so much better. Tusk, his maximum health went from 650, 1300, 2600 to 700, 1400, 2800. Venomancer is now a tier 1 unit. So, we have a lot of examples of, the tier 4 and 5 switching and, people from 1 going to 3. But this is an example of a tier 3 going to a tier 1. I guess we had Razor, so, it's not the first one, but it's still interesting to see. So the maximum health was 550, 1100, 2200 to 500, 1000, 2000, so it's actually not that big of a change. Health kind of still stays the same about. The attack damage maximum went from 60, 120, 240 to 55, 110, and 220. So, the damage on that didn't really change either. But the number of wards that they can have, instead of having 1, 2, and 4, is just 1, 1, and 3. So if you can 3-star Venomancer, which is actually decently likely because it's a 1-star, or, a 1-star now, or tier 1, sorry. It's not going to feel too much different, but just across the board at the 1-star and 2-star, he's going to be very, not 1-star, but 2-star, you'll feel that a little bit. But honestly, I think Venomancer is going to be a very strong tier 1 because they didn't really nerf him that much. Having the Plague Wards changed a little bit, but at the 1-star level, you still have 1, so it doesn't really matter. And at the 2-star level, you're only half of it, and then once you get to 3-star, you only have 1 less than when you would at Venomancer, and because he was a tier 3, the chances of 3-starring old Venomancer wasn't very likely, so honestly, it's not that bad. Plague Wards also, though, armor changed from, okay, so I might have made a mistake here. I did not read the Plague Wards. The armor changed from 5 to 0, and then the maximum health went from 200 to 200, 200 to 240. Attack damage on those went from 50 to 50, 80, 120, and 100 to 55, 100, and 140 for the maximum. So the armor is the biggest thing there, but the everything else didn't really change that much. So the minus 5 armor is going to be impactful. They're going to die a little bit sooner, but I still think Venomancer is going to be a pretty decent tier 1 unit. Viper, his maximum health changed just, at the 3-star 2200 to 3000, and then the minimum and maximum got buffed from 150 to 240 and 240 to 360. Wind Ranger, now this is one of the other things to look out for. She's no longer a tier 3, she is a tier 2. The maximum health got buffed at the 3rd, star from 2200 to 2300. Minimum just went 60, 120, 240. It's now 50, 100, 230. And maximum was 65, 130, 260, 260, 120, 260. And Power Shot, which is like one of the coolest things about Wind Ranger, the damage pretty much chopped off 200 across the board. 400, 600, 800 to 200, 400, 600. And keep in mind, that's, Power Shot goes through a bunch of units, so having 200 damage less on everyone it hits is actually pretty impactful. Item changes. Now this is one of my most excited things I am for this balance change, is the alliance item rework. So all of the alliance items, so I'll just read this out. Alliance items no longer have an inherent tier and are now in their own alliance category. At the start of every game, alliance items are randomly assigned a tier 1, 2, or 3 and are then mixed into the item pool and awarded as normal. Each player can have an alliance items appear at different tiers. For example, player A could be offered Strange Bedfellows at tier 1, where it would provide a 30% bonus, while player B could be offered Strange Bedfellows at tier 3, where it would provide a 50% plus 50% bonus. Likewise, in the same game, player A could be offered Elusive Targets at tier 2 with a duration of 3 seconds, while player B could have it tier 1 with a duration of 2 seconds. All players will have the same number of alliance items per tier in their item pool. So the thing is what's good about that is being able to see those alliance items later in the game can be more impactful, because before, say, Strange Bedfellows, okay, you kind of had to just guess and be like, do I think demons, did I get one single anti-mage? Am I going to try to go for it? But now you can be like, oh, I actually have a couple demons Strange Bedfellows get offered to me at tier 3. Heck yeah, I'll take it. That's going to be a huge, huge change. So it's really cool. And then obviously because of that, you had a lot of changes. There's not really a whole lot of reason to go through, reading them all in depth, talking about it. But, Unstable Reactor, the damage went from just 20% to 10, 20, 30%. Coordinated Assault, 25 to 10, 20, 30. Check the Bodies, 20% to 10, 20, 30. So you kind of just see there's on all of these things, there's kind of just 3 now tiers, because it can be tier 1 through 3, and that goes through everything. So it's going to change the game a lot. I think overall it's going to make alliances stronger, just because of the fact that you don't have to guess. You don't have to just say, okay, I think I'm going to do the Strange Bedfellows, get it at tier 1, and then just have to hope you get demons. You can say, be like, hey, I actually have some demons, let me take Strange Bedfellows because it offered it to me. So I think that is really, really awesome. So overall, we're going to just skip these because we're already 40 minutes into this, and we still got more. We got items now. Maelstrom, just tier change from 4 to 3, so you'll see it more often. That's pretty cool. Vicious Intent, 4 to 3. Pretty good. Force Staff, 3 to 2. I still don't really like Force Staff that much. I don't think it being tier 2 is going to help a lot. Radiance from 4 to 5. Radiance definitely deserved that. Radiance is like one of the best items in the game. Silver Lining, you can only have 1, and charges start at 1. I still think Silver Lining is trash since they nerfed it. Daedalus, the crit multiplier changed from 235 to 200, and damage changed from 80 to 70. Small little nerf. Arcane Boots, range change from 1 to 2. It's actually a pretty big buff, honestly, because it's going to affect, instead of just kind of like the little people around it, potentially all of your units if you have them clumped up. Iascati, tier change from 3 to 4. Battle Fury, damage added is 70, and cleave percent change from 30 to 35%. So it's a pretty big buff. I think Battle Fury is going to be a lot better. Summoning Stone attack speed bonus change from 30 to 45. Summoning Stone definitely needed that. Chainmail bonus armor change from 10 to 7. Nerf on the tier 1 Chainmail. Chainmail was pretty much easily like one of the best units you could or items you could get at tier 1. So it's a little nerfed. Mask of Madness is no longer tier 2, it's tier 3. The attack speed went from 40 to 60, and lifesteal increased from 10 to 20. It's a huge buff to Mask of Madness because, yes, it's a tier 3, but Mask of Madness is really good if you can get the right combos on. You put it like on Bloodseeker or people that doesn't really impact them that much. Having it be that much better is going to be amazing. Completing the cycle, range changed from 1 cell to 2 cells. Pretty awesome buff. Recruiter changed the first reroll is free to rerolls now cost 1 gold, which is huge. Tier change from 5 to 4. I think that's a massive buff because, yes, you still have to pay that 1 change, but if you're going to keep on re-rolling, that is just halving your cost. And if you spend 50 on rerolls, you're only spending 25 now, so that's amazing. A higher class of criminal changed from tier 3 to tier 5. That needed to happen. A higher class criminal was the item that all of your units show up as if you were 1 level or higher. That was one of the most insane items, partially maybe because we were in the legendary meta, but the fact that it is a tier 5 is definitely going to make it more of just like, I want to see legendaries even more often. Shaman Pluck, ignore magic immune enemies. So now We also got changes to loot rounds. I told you this was a big patch. We are 43 minutes into this and we're still not done. So losing to a neutral creep wave no longer removes 2 options from your item choices, and losing to a neutral creep wave results in being offered rewards from the previous creep wave's tier, except in the first creep wave where losing has no penalty. So what that means is, before if you lost, out of the 3 options, 2 of them would be striked and you had to pick one unless you had the, item that gave you one more option. So instead, what it does is you still get to pick. You get offered items from the last creep wave's tier. So I really like that change because sometimes if you lost and you only had one item to pick from, potentially it could just be a worthless item. It could be an alliance item that is just terrible. You have, it's literally useless. If it's the human alliance item and you're not running humans, it is literally worthless to you. So you can still pick now, just the quality of items you get are, going to be a lot lower. And on top of that, they made creep waves a lot harder, which a lot of people really wanted, myself included, because creep waves were kind of just a joke. So, round 10, the big golem, the maximum health changed from 2,000 to 1,500, and small golem went from 1,500 to 1,000. But golems now have the Mega Warrior Alliance, and Mega Warrior, if there's 2 units, allied Mega Warriors gain 20 armor. So 20 armor is a lot. It's definitely a lot. Big Wolf. The attack damage changed from 100, 200 to 200, 250, and armor changed from 10 to 5, but maximum health 25 to 2,000, and Small Wolf maximum health changed from 1,500 to 1,250. So they're losing health, they're losing armor, damage went up a little bit, but Wolves now have Mega Assassin Alliance, Mega Assassin 2 units, allied Mega Assassins have 25% chance to critical hit for 300% damage. 300% damage on 25% chance. These wolves are going to delete people, but they're going to have less health, so it's making it interesting. And what I like about these changes is they're definitely making them harder. These units are harder, but they're making each thing a little bit extreme, so you can kind of balance around your team around. You can change things, you can change your board, and it's not just like, oh, we're going to buff just the stats of all of these units a little bit. They're going to do unique things. So these people, the 20 armor, these people, the crit chance. Round 20, the tomato armor changed from 0 to 25, so an increase of 25 armor. And the potato magic resistance changed from 0 to 50%. And tomato and potato now have the Mega Bloodbound Alliance. When one of them dies, the other gets plus 500% damage. So I really like that they're making all of these creep waves very unique and have a unique feel to them. 25, Rebdol Wildwing, attack damage went from 500, 700 to 300, 500, and the Hatchling went from 400, 650 to 200, 450, so less damage, but they have Mega Elusive, which gives them 75% evasion. The Thunderhide Alpha now has 100 mana and casts Bloodlust, and the maximum damage went from 200 to 1,000 to 200 to 1,500. Thunderhide now has 100 mana and casts Bloodlust, and then 200, 800 to 200, 1,200. And they now have Mega Warlock, so whenever a Warlock casts a spell, they're going to do that whole, forming a link thing with 200% of the damage healed. 35, the Black Dragon, his splash attacks now deal 100% splash damage. The Black Dragon now has the Mega Scaled Alliance, which gets 75% magic resistance. Round 4, the Trolls. The Troll Buddy, Dark Troll Buddy, the damage went from 200, 300 to 200, 400. And then the Troll Priest went from 200, 500 to 550, 650. Maximum health went from 5,000 to 10,000. Dark Troll Boss went from 200, 500, 400, 800 to 5,000, 10,000, and they have Mega Troll, which gives them all plus 50 attack speed. Round 45, the Year Beast, magic resist increased from 50 to 80. He has Mega Demon, which gives him 100% pure damage, and then Roshan is now spell immune, which is crazy. Attack speed went 0.5 to 0.67, and attack damage 500, 1,500 to 750, 1,500. So very, very big change. Took us about 50 minutes to go through all of it. So if you're still watching, thank you so much. This patch is honestly changing up Dota Underlords completely. It's going to be a completely different game now. Not only do you have all of the hero changes changing around what tiers people are at, you also have the the unit, the enemy loot rounds that are changing a lot. You have the alliance item changes, which is going to change the game a ton. You have the couple alliance changes we got. You have the huge reroll change, and you have the assassin. So some things will stay on the lookout. I think Savage is going to be a little bit better. I think Assassins are going to be crazy good. I think Mages got nerfed very hard. I think the AoE meta is definitely not going to be a thing. I think the Legendary meta is not going to be a thing. And I am very excited for this patch to come out, honestly. So hopefully it comes out very soon. But either way, that is good old patch note professor for you. But if you enjoyed this video, if you enjoyed the really in-depth going into these patch notes line by line that take up 50 minutes of your time, if you enjoyed this, let me know in the comments down below. You know, leave a like and feel free to subscribe if you want to see more Underlords content. But overall, this video is going on long enough. So if you guys are having a great day today, I'm glad you continue having a great day. If you're not having a great day, I hope you guys start having a great day. But either way, guys, I hope you guys have a great rest of the day. And like always, guys, see you guys next time.